Well, and I think that's good to know, right? Because I think a lot of times there's a tendency to always look to what's newest, what's best, but
Mhm.
really it's just using what's already out there and integrating it intelligently.
Mhm.
To to a large extent, I would agree. I mean, there is new technology coming out there. I mean, of course, living in Canada, we always say, well, why haven't we got more data centers in Canada? Because of the climate. Free air cooling, you could use a lot of free air cooling. But again, it's maybe inappropriately I use the term it's a culture within within the data center world. It's a change. I mean, you talk about immersion cooling. I mean, to me that makes so much sense. But you're telling me you're going to take my servers and put my servers in a liquid bath? Like, are they really going to continue to operate like that? And so, I mean, you hear a lot of pushback on significant advances like that. But I agree with Professor Lee. I mean, one of the here in Canada, one of the it's a showcase that one of the large telecom companies developed, the TELUS Garden in Vancouver, and it's a 1 million square foot retail office facility, commercial space adjacent to a large data center. And so they're taking the heat from the data center and using that to heat the Telus Gardens facility, which they say is 1 million square feet. Now, I think they actually did it as a retrofit to an existing data center. But are they? Are you? First question is, are you making any money on that? No, probably not. I would say absolutely not. But it is a showcase as what can be done. We've talked to a number of companies about using excess data or excess heat out of data centers to do it, but air is not a good medium. And by the time you factor in all the other heat exchangers, heat pumps, this type of thing that you need to do, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, at least at this point in time. Maybe things will improve. Here, discussions about using fuel cell technology for energy generation to make it more efficient for use in data centers. I see some large colo companies are putting solar panels on their data centers to offset the cost of that. Of course, now I'm not sure how prevalent it is elsewhere, but certainly in North America, the use of RECs, uh, um, renewable energy certificates, as such as part of the way of offsetting the I guess I'd say the appearance of energy cost as such within data centers. But so there's lots going on, but I think there's a lot out there that we could still be deploying within existing centers that would make them much more energy efficient. But it's just that it's the investment cost to get companies to do it here in Ontario. I mean, we're paying larger data centers are probably paying 10 cents a kilowatt hour. The normal consumer, the regular residential consumer is paying, I think pretty much loaded is about 14 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's fairly high cost. But even at those numbers, sometimes it's difficult to put a business case together to say that this is justifiable strictly from an energy point of view. Um, so one of the things that we've been looking at for the last few months is how do we monetize the deferral of capital? We can go into a data center and see they've got, let's use an example of crack units. They've got 8 crack units in there, and they're saying, well, we think we need to buy a new one. By the time we're done work in there, they're down to operating with 4 crack units, maybe 5 crack units. So they don't need to buy that additional crack unit. So that deferral of capital, how do you monetize that and put it into a payback scenario? We're looking at ways of doing that. How do you monetize the fact that now I've improved your energy efficiency, the airflow efficiency and airflow effectiveness in your data center? Now you can load up your racks. Instead of having your racks at 6-7 kilowatts, now you can load them up to 10 kilowatts, which means you don't have to expand the footprint of that data center. How do you monetize that and put that back into a value that the customer can say, hey, not only I'm saving this much energy, I'm deferring this capital cost, which is equivalent to this, because I don't have to buy another cooling unit and I don't have to do an expansion on my data center. When you factor all those things in, it's a good picture. But how do you monetize that? That's what we're looking at trying to do.
I'll even throw one idea in there because monetization often comes at the exit of the asset. And so
Mm-hmm.
on the real estate side, when we're looking at things, we're saying, oh, okay, when were the last time some of these units have been upgraded?
Right.
And is the tenant going to stay in the data center, especially for these enterprise data centers over the long haul? Because
Mm-hmm.
if they are, and the building has been kept up very well and all the latest cooling has been employed, well, the investor is going to pay top dollar for that to the
Yeah.
tune of maybe an extra 40-50% on the acquisition price. And
Mm-hmm.
so we
Yeah.
we try to remind folks all the time, hey, when were the last upgrades? Has the gens been kicking in a lot? And if the gens have been kicking in a lot, investors aren't stupid. They're going to look at it. They're going to ask why. And
Mm-hmm.
there are any number of extra things that come outside of efficiency, but are paid back when you end up selling the building. And so
Yeah.
I think that's a little part at the end that a lot of folks aren't focused on too.
No, no. Well, especially in colo sites. I mean,
Sure.
if you're the design or I don't even say design, the layout of your data center is such that you can only accommodate 3 kilowatts per rack for a customer, and we can go in there and improve to the point where you're carrying 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 kilowatts per rack for in a site. How much more revenue can you generate in that site? Because now I can accommodate a lot more customers in that site as well. But how do you, I mean, there's ways of doing it, but we just haven't spent the time to really try to put a dollar value to it. But I mean, when we went and do our work, I mean, one example we come out of, we call it released. Some people call it stranded IT capacity. We call it that. We also call released IT capacity, released cooling efficiency. A lot of cases, clients don't know how much cooling capacity do I really have in my site. They know from a spec sheet point of view what they have, but given the way your data center is operating, how much do you actually have that you can use in there? And we've created some metrics that we use of the amount of power per kilowatt of cooling required, how many kilowatts of cooling do you need for IT per kilowatt of IT load, and we use those metrics, and we've seen cases where we've increased the IT load, or we have given the customer the potential to add another 128% IT load in that site than what they had, and they thought they were running out of capacity for IT load. Well, no, you've got lots of cooling capacity here to accommodate another 100% of IT load, but you have to do the efficiency measures. You have to improve the airflow. You've got to improve the cooling efficiency and cooling effectiveness in order to make that work. So, but I mean, the old adage, you can't manage what you don't measure, and that's been a lot of cases where there is. How do you measure cooling efficiency? How do you measure cooling effectiveness? Well, we've developed some metrics that seem to work. Now, could you actually add 100% or 128% more IT load to that data center? Probably not, because it never quite goes as you plan, but certainly you could add another 70 or 80% of IT load to that data center and be quite safe with it. So it's just getting that information in front of clients so they understand what they can do with their sites and how much more they can do with their sites, I guess is what I'm saying, without having to spend a big amount of capital to achieve that.
Sure, absolutely.